We're not going to.
This is a hard one. There's like, well, I'll say
a lot. Hi,
Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and we are with Brendan Shapiro for the first time in numerous seasons. Oh, I have myself on over there. Episode 2 predictions for Survivor 44 with Brendan, who, since he has left the specialist, has gone on to such podcast fame with Surviving Snyder. For anybody who's looking, they're like, "Wow, how did you get the guy from Surviving Snyder?" We were kind of like your launching pad. Don't ever forget that, Brendan. You know,
no doubt about it. This the Survivor specialists, I think have to be the first podcast I ever appeared on. You know, after I was voted out, I did all the various interviews that you do, like on the day that you get voted out. But I don't know that. I'm pretty sure. No. Yeah. I mean, I guess the like Dalton's podcast and Rob's podcast and those but that's what everybody does, right? I did that like, you know, in that blur of a day after, but then once the dust settled and it was time to really be choosy and figure out, okay, who do I want to talk to? Of course it was Phil and Alexa. So yeah, that was the first one. Had a great time talking to you once or twice, I think. And so it's great to be back. It's been too long. Excited.
Yeah. We had Will on here too at the end of one episode. He came on and gave his predictions. So I think we've had you on 2 or 3 times. Although nobody would believe that you became professional after doing this, after I butchered that opening, because the playback from the YouTube video was just screaming in my ears. So I was just mumbling over myself. But hey, we get it done. And somehow we caught the attention of Brendan. So we did something right.
Well, yeah, thanks for allowing me to join you guys. I have to say I'm a little intimidated to give predictions after only seeing one episode, and we've got to like rank order 17 people and who's the least likely and most likely to go home. This is a tall task. So I'm going to lean heavy on you guys to drive this thing because, you know, I watched the episode, of course, but I haven't had time to rewatch it. So I'm just going on what I saw a week ago, and I'm going to do my best.
This is always the hardest prediction episode to do because there's so many people in the middle. There's a few people I think are really safe, a handful that I think are not safe, and then a lot of people who I'm going off of like 10 seconds of airtime with, and that's about it. I also haven't rewatched the episode. I really wish I could have. What did you think of the premiere? And what do you think of the new era as a whole since we haven't talked to you?
Well, okay, so a couple of things. First of all, my predictive powers have to be in question right now because my winner pick for this season was none other than Maddie. So I couldn't have been more wrong. I could have been slightly more wrong. I could have picked Bruce, but no, I picked the second one out. You know what? And I picked her because she seemed interesting and funny in like the pregame press, like, you know, like the questionnaire they fill out, but also I was just watching her on social media. She just seemed like she was, I don't know. She had the kind of social media presence that people have sometimes when they're going to go a long way, or maybe it's the one you have when you know you're going to flame out early and you got to get it while you can. I'm not sure, but anyway, I picked her to win. So take that for what it's worth as I now try to predict the rest of the season.
I love that. My first pick in our fantasy draft was Maddie. I picked her first overall. She wasn't my official winner pick, but I don't know, man. There's something about just like certain types of players. Last year, I took Justine as my actual winner pick, and she finished 17th. It's tough though because with Maddie, so this gets thrown around way too much. I think where it's like, who's the best first boot? Because ultimately, you're a first boot. Like, how good were you really?
Yep.
I feel like Maddie really had a lot of game, and I don't necessarily think that she played poorly to be the first boot. I just think she played aggressively. And a little too aggressive for what this new era of Survivor is. Because in this new era, there's just too many random things that can happen to you on a really small tribe. And everything that could go wrong for Maddie went wrong for Maddie for her to get voted out 1-0 in this episode. Yeah,
I think that's right. And, you know, Jeff talks about how like it's like this alchemy, right? You have all these different players. And so I believe that like if I went and played the way I played 20 times, I get 20 different results, you know, and that's just the way it goes. So yeah, she played an aggressive style. And I think that's a style that with a certain group of players might have done really well for her. And it didn't in this case. Now you said it, Phil. I mean, there was some bad luck involved, right? I mean, she had one vote cast against. And so, you know, who could have seen that coming? But yeah, that was a wild episode. As for what do I think of the new era of Survivor and specifically what do I think of this season? I mean, it was off to a hell of a start. Episode 1 was crazy. I can't say that it's like Survivor being played at the highest level just yet. It's being played at a chaotic and crazy level, which is entertaining and it's fun, and it makes Survivor fun. There are huge personalities. Like I was talking about this with some other people that we had this big episode full of medevacs or a medevac and all these emergencies and big characters. So I do a podcast with Dalton Ross and Rick Devens, Surviving Snyder. And we were talking about this, and I found myself at the end of our sort of recap of the episode saying okay, we just talked about this episode for an hour and I haven't mentioned Jam or Carolyn once. Right. And so that's that speaks to how much is going on just in the first episode. It's exciting. And by all accounts, I mean, all the inside info, right, is that this is going to be a really entertaining season. So I've got high hopes.
So
yeah, there's something fun about sloppiness, and especially in the premiere too. I think players are just so nervous at the beginning, and especially now, I feel like everyone's a super fan. Everybody's overanalyzed the game, so there's definitely a lot of fun to the sloppiness. But I remember I was like, why is everyone playing this shot in the dark? Which sort of gets mildly cleared up in all of Maddie's exit interviews,
right.
But at the same time, not exactly.
I have to say something too. I preface with I really like Maddie because I really did. I liked her game. I liked what she did. I think she was a little, like I said, just too aggressive for what these tribes are. I can't tell what from her post-game press was 100% legit and what was I'm just going to rile up the fans. Because I think she's doing
always questionable.
I mean, here's the thing, Brendan, and I mean, you know this because your dream was short-lived too on Ghost Island. And you know that to be able to ever have a shot at this again, you kind of have to sell yourself all the time, right? So I'm trying to figure out how much of what Maddie is doing is really just overdoing it in a positive way. I don't care. I say go for it, whatever. And I'm very entertained by her post-game press, but I don't feel like we're getting as much from it as maybe we think we're getting from it.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And she has the advantage of being the only person out there who can say anything about what has happened at this point. I guess Bruce could have a little something to say, but
I don't think he remembers any of it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't, right? So yeah, and yeah, she's going big, and so I'm sure she's thinking, when I was voted out, I was thinking, okay, what possible scenario could there be where I might get, invited back because I was only there for a little while and whatever. And so she's thinking that through right now. She's thinking, okay, if they do a pre-merge season, if they do a first boot season, if they do a whatever. I mean, she's not technically first boot, but first one voted out. And so, yeah, I mean, of course, she's going to take every opportunity to make herself as big a character as she can. I don't blame her. So, I mean, it's funny. And I think she knows, when she's calling herself the Godfather, having been there for all of 3 days, it's, I think she's having fun with it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. And also I feel like I try to look at, I have tried in the past to look at exit interviews and say, oh, well, that makes sense. But it's very biased because they were interviewed right after watching 6 months later what happened. So I like to take it into account, but I also know there's totally an agenda with it, but good for her.
Yeah.
So now I have a question for you regarding the format that they've done, because 41, 42, 43, and now 44 have all started with 3 tribes of 6. You played on one of the last seasons that didn't do that. I think there was only 2 seasons after yours that did do it, which I guess is, whatever. But since 36, it was 36, 37, 39, and 40. So 3 seasons after yours have done this. Would this have changed the way that you would play the game in the early days, knowing that there's only 6 people on a tribe, or do you think it wouldn't make a difference to you?
Yeah, I think it plays differently in that there's nowhere to hide. I think there's probably a heightened sense of paranoia with only 6 because your odds, if you look, when I was out there, we started with 2 tribes of 10. I was at risk right away when we went to tribal council, but I didn't really think I was too much at risk at that point. Whereas if I had been in a group of 6, all of a sudden that just feels far more urgent. And so, yeah, there's just nowhere to hide with 3 tribes of 6. I think, what was surprising, okay, the old school Survivor, way old school Survivor, the weak and the annoying would get voted out first. And then people started figuring out, well, wait a second, we don't want to keep those people, or we want to keep those people around because they'll be easy to beat in the end. And so, those people tended to make it past the merge. And then when you go to 6, if I'm in a group of 6, I'm thinking to myself, okay, the very first time I go to tribal council, I got a 1 in 6 shot of going out of here. I really, really, really don't want to be at tribal council. I mean, nobody ever does, but you really don't want to be there when there's only 6. And then if you lose 1 and now you're down to 5, there really is nowhere to hide. So I have to think that probably when you are dealing with groups of 6 in those first couple of votes, it might protect somebody who is perceived as being a little bigger, a little stronger, a little more athletic, a little better at puzzles, whatever, you name it, right? Whereas that's not as much an issue. I think a tribe of 10 is more willing to get rid of somebody who might be a challenge asset. I think a tribe of 6 is less willing to do that. But I could be wrong, but I think that's the way I would have played it anyway. Is I'd be willing to cut somebody loose who might be able to help us win a challenge. If I were in a group of 10, I would be far less likely to do that in a group of 6.
And this whole argument gets even more granular when you're pretty much always operating with someone not having a vote.
Yeah. And I think it's funny you mentioned that, though, because I think Maddie was playing as if she was on a tribe of 10 because she's trying to go after Brandon, who was the strongest. And I mean, we'll get into they stopped the challenge for him, but who was the strongest player on their tribe from a physical standpoint. She was trying to go after him right away because she felt that was going to be better for her game. She didn't trust him with everything that happened with the idol and all of that. But I feel like in a group of 10, that has a better chance of working than it does in this group of 6. And ultimately he played his idol, but we've seen kind of from Matthew here, it does feel like his shot in the dark play was a bit of a tip off to Brandon at this point without him wanting to ruffle feathers in case Brandon did go home.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that was his play to make sure that he didn't have to pick a side, and he didn't have to look bad coming back to camp. And yeah, it sure seemed like it spooked Brandon because it from the post-game press, it seems like Brandon maybe wasn't going to play that idol, or at least that's what the thinking is, that he wasn't going to play that idol until things started to get crazy. He didn't go into tribal council thinking he was going to play it. Yeah. And then of course he ended up doing it. So yeah, I think you're probably right about that.
I think it would have, this doesn't matter because he ended up staying, but regardless, I think he would have had to play it because of the way he got it, and that tribe is already so rocky, holding on to something that people are already just really uncomfortable with wasn't going to bode well for him. So obviously it didn't end up saving him, but I hope that he would have played it regardless because now it's a little bit more of an even playing field. And I think hopefully he'll get his stamina back. I think the 100% of the reason why he had medical come is because he was pulling coconuts around for 4 hours beforehand, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like that's the thing that gets lost in this is that, I mean, you watch that challenge in hour 4, he and
Matthew
were, they were pulling for all they were worth, I just can't, like anyone that's ever done some like ultra distance or not even ultra distance or run a marathon or whatever, at the end of that thing, imagine running a marathon and then the next day or 2 days later, you're out there on no sleep and no calories trying to go out there and do like this really explosive, like these movements that are anaerobic where you're like, you've got nothing in your body. So yeah, I think that had he not been the coconut puller on day 1, he wouldn't have had the same problems that he had in the challenge later.
So now what do you think about the fact that they stopped the challenge for Brandon? I get the Bruce one. I was still hard on production for this, but like I get the Bruce one. How do you feel about them stopping this for Brandon and giving him an IV? I have to throw that in.
Yeah. So I think when you see somebody, okay, if it had been like, so I think the big issue here is when you see somebody look faint and like they're kind of falling out, like they're just collapsing to the ground. I mean, if that had been some heart issue, if it had been like a, heat stroke where all of a sudden he goes into like cardiac failure or something like that. I mean, there's just no coming back from that. Personally, I think for the people that were involved in production, there's no coming back from it. But from a business standpoint, there's no coming back from it. That's just absolute disaster. It's kind of like, here's my analogy, right? If I went to the emergency room right now and I had a broken arm, clearly broken, compound fracture, I might wait in the waiting room for 3 hours before I get seen. If I go in there and say I'm having chest pains, they're going to see me within 30 seconds, right? Because they just don't want to mess around with certain kinds of injuries, right? So I'm not surprised when somebody is essentially falling out. Now, the counter argument is there have been other times in the show where people have like fainted and just fallen to the ground.
Lauren was laying there.
Right.
She was just laying there.
Yeah.
And so, who's to say she didn't have like a cardiac event or something like that? I mean, she didn't, but how could they have known? So I don't fault them. I don't fault the doctors for jumping in. And I think probably they were all a little bit trigger happy having seen what happened with Bruce, because Bruce hit his head. They cleared him to play again, and then he had to go out of the game later. There again, the last thing you want is, okay, we kind of didn't judge this just right, or we thought he was cool, he wasn't cool. Now we're not taking any chances. I think they were kind of just primed to jump all over anything that happened next. So I'm not surprised that they did it. I don't fault them for it. Whereas if he had, broken his finger or whatever, and they're like, oh, stop the challenge, I'd be like, why don't you just let it play out? Like, he can sit off to the side, but like, you don't need to stop the whole challenge. But I think if it appears like it even remotely could be a sort of a dire consequence or a life and death kind of thing, they're gonna stop it probably from here on out.
I think that's what the division was, and like Carla made a good point. Like last season, like 6 episodes ago, her hands are cramping up. But I think at the end of the day, and like whether or not this is right, if someone is in like a life or death situation, and fainting is going to seem more like that than a broken arm, like you said.
Yeah.
I just have to throw this in though. And this is the pessimist, because Brendan, if Brendan plays Survivor again, he's on the hero tribe. We all know that. Okay, we get it, because Bradley was the villain, so you're the hero. I'm not the hero. I'm the pessimist. I look at this as, I worry that future survivors are going to be able to exploit this now. And here's what I mean. Brandon sat down and said, I can't even get up. And that's when Jeff was like, all right, we got to stop the challenge. They literally don't cut, and Brandon is up and walking. And it stopped the challenge, and he sat there, and they checked him out, and he was fine. And then he got an IV. And I'm like, okay, by saying I can't get up, those were like the trigger words for Jeff. If I go, like when I'm feeling like crap, like I could be mowing my lawn, and I come inside, and I'm like, oh, I can't even walk right now. That was kind of what surprised me. And I guess Brandon probably looked bad, but I just hope future survivors don't find a way to exploit this, because I could see it happening. And I keep going back to this. I'm going to keep saying it. Got an IV. If I'm on the island and I see somebody else getting an IV on another tribe, I'm like, yo, Jeff, I don't feel good either. I feel terrible. Give me my IV. I need it. I'm not going to, because IVs are huge. They're huge. That's what they give you when you can't drink water.
I've clearly never had an IV because I did not know how much that carried.
Yeah, so an IV is a big deal. Although I will say this. Water is the one thing on the island that's not in short supply. If you don't want to be dehydrated, you are never at risk of being dehydrated. Like the water wells, I mean, there's always water in the well. At the beginning of my season, we're like, hey, do we need to be boiling this? Because remember back in the day, like you better boil it, right? Or else you're going to come back with all sorts of parasites. And as it turns out in my season, a few people did come back with some parasites, but whatever. It's not that big a deal. You can just drink the water. And so I was like overhydrated when I was out there because I didn't have anything to eat. So I was like, I might as well drink water. So I had all the water in the world. So that's not really the issue. Now, if they were giving them like a granola bar or something, that's a whole different matter. But yeah, I see your point. Like you've just laid out the plan for some devious player in the future to be like, yeah, things aren't going well. I'm gonna break the action here. And I mean, I guess the question really is, okay, let's say your tribe's losing, you're in a bad way, or individually, let's say you're competing individually at some point, right? Things aren't going well, and you fake an injury. You fake like, oh, I can't see, I'm falling down, and then everybody stops. I mean, does that really put you in an advantage getting back to it afterwards? Because everybody gets a break. Well, so I don't know.
Here's what one of my friends brought up, which I thought was a good point. He said they were at the puzzle portion. Jeff can say stop, stop, stop. Every single puzzle solver is even if they're looking away, they're going, okay, what if I move that one here and I move this one here and I move that one here? And now you're starting to level that out. Now I agree with you. That doesn't necessarily give you an advantage because everybody still has that kind of same thing. But while you can physically stop doing a part of the challenge, mentally, you're trying to solve that puzzle still as Brandon is being checked out over on the side. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It'll be interesting to see in future seasons whether we see more of these stoppages. I mean, hopefully that's it, right? It's not fun. Like, it's not fun to watch when they have to stop a challenge. It's not. I mean, it was dramatic with Bruce. They did the whole super slow-mo and his head's bleeding and all that. But like there's not a lot of production value. There's not a lot of entertainment like in Brandon. Like, oh, stop, I don't feel well. Like that didn't add anything, right? So let's hope for our sake as viewers that doesn't keep happening.
Yeah. All right, let's rank them, since otherwise this would be like we could do 4 hours with you, Brendan, if you want to. But let's start ranking.
Okay, remind me. So we go from least likely to most likely to.
Yes.
What's our order here?
So we go from who you think has no chance of going home, and then last will be this person could go home or should be going home this week.
1 to 16.
Yeah, luckily it's only 16, not 7. You actually got a break here, Brendan, because Bruce was medevac. So send him a thank you, because you would have had to do 17, and that's harder. But you only have 16 tonight.
Lucky.
So what's the order? So we take turns. Is that how we're doing it?
Yeah, we'll just kind of flip through it. Normally I put the guest on the spot with number 1, and then we'll kind of just like kind of roll with it a little bit. You can, if you have your number 1 and then I say my number 1 is your number 2, you can jump in and be like, that's who I have at number 2. Don't be like, oh, that's who I have at number 11. If I have them at 1 or 2. But I know I think we haven't had you on since either 39 or 38.
Right, we did this, and but I just, gosh, this is hard. Okay, so I'll go first. Yeah, I'm gonna say, who's not going anywhere, and I think just because, and this may come as a surprise to both of you that I would put this person this high, but I'm saying, Carolyn ain't going anywhere. I like it. In the second episode. Now that doesn't mean I think she's going to win the game, but is she safe for week 2? Absolutely. So Carolyn is my number 1. She got the first confessional of the season. It was a bizarre first confessional. I loved it. It was awesome. She is like, I mean, she may by the end of this thing vie for like the most over the top bizarre character in the history of Survivor, and that's a pretty high bar. So I think she's going to be a ton of fun, and I think she's going to be around for a little while. So Carolyn is my safest player at this point.
Which she's like totally owning it, and I think I said this in the preseason, like she's extremely aware of herself, and she did a really funny like makeup tutorial on Instagram, and she's like, "You've all been wondering how I got this dirt mustache. Like, let's walk through it together," and it was hilarious. I think she's here for a good time, not for a long time. I don't know how long she'll be around, but I agree with you. We are like scratching the surface of her story, of her personality, and also some like potential game growth out of her too. So I like that pick. I don't think she's going home.
The interesting thing with Carolyn is she is so Nora, where if she hits a certain point where she doesn't go home in however many episodes, she will be sitting at the final 3. Yeah. Like it's a matter of, does she go home in one of these first 3 or 4 episodes, or is she sitting at final 3 with a chance to pitch her case for why she deserves to win this season? The only thing I worry about is that she looked so lost and desperate once Bruce was gone because nobody will talk to her and all that. I also think that is being super played up by production because Carolyn is such an easy edit. Like she is an editor's dream. And I think that is helping her right now, and why we're seeing her as so on the bottom, where I think she's going to be a more unhinged David Wright, essentially. That probably doesn't ever have as much of a chance to win as David Wright, but has a similar arc of nobody would even talk to me, and now you're all my best friends. Yeah.
Love unhinged David Wright.
Yeah.
I take a little bit of a different angle. I actually have Danny at number 1. Did you too, Phil?
I did, and I was going to lead in with like, of course I can't help myself. We have Brendan on the podcast, so I have to take like the super fit guy who just screams winner, So I have Danny also at number 1.
Danny's my number 2. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. We're all on the same page. I know, not to like echo chamber ourselves, Phil, but yeah, I think Danny. We were just talking. You were just talking about Brendan, how it is the tribe strength is really important at this point. So he seems like he's probably the strongest person on that tribe. I also think any drama that we're seeing on that tribe is not around him. He was extremely quiet that episode. We have a potential friendship, showmance, situationship coming up next episode on that tribe. I don't think he doesn't even come up. So I think he's in a really good spot.
Wait, who's the showmance?
Matt and Franny.
Matt and Franny for we got, a 5-second clip, which means it might turn into something or probably turn into nothing.
It's pretty much Kellen and Bradley 2.0 if you want to get that, relive your glory days.
Well, although, yeah, right. Although I was just scrolling Twitter recently and I saw it was like a review of a look at all the LGBTQ representation on this season, and it had pictures of 3 people, including Franny. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what her situation is, but my sense was that she was, and so maybe she's bisexual. I'm not sure, but the picture at least would lead me to believe that perhaps she wouldn't be interested. I don't know, and
maybe she's going to be able to pull Matt in because Matt's going goo and just be all right,
maybe he just doesn't realize.
Honestly, that's kind of something though that we haven't seen on Survivor yet, which would be really interesting.
I would be so here for that.
Who knows? Maybe.
Who knows? But they are playing it up as a showmance.
So is it my turn again? Are we already back to me?
Well, you did too. So you did Danny already, but I just want to ask this. So do we know anything about Danny other than the fact that we just don't think he's going home because he's probably the strongest person there?
Absolutely not. Nothing else.
No, I mean, except for there's a secret deleted scene where he looked super self-aware and fun and friendly, and he sort of gets people and is just sort of open to the tribe and kind, and then in the episode, and then in the secret scene, he just doubled down on that, right? He just totally self-aware, just seems to get it. I think he's going to navigate the social game really, really well. So I don't think he's going to, for all the reasons you guys said, I think he's going to be looked at as a big asset in challenges. But I think beyond that, he's just going to be super well liked until the point at which he's too well liked and they need to get rid of him. But that's certainly not in episode 2.
Not in episode 2.
Yeah, I feel like all I know about him is that he's a New York City firefighter, but he's also really into breathing and meditation. So hard not to like somebody like that, especially early on when you want to be building tribe camaraderie and tribe strength. I think he's fine.
My number 2, I go a different route, although he is the second buffest person on this season, and I'm going Carson. So Mr. 30 pounds himself, I'm picking him because I really think that if Carolyn is going to be the character of this season, Carson is going to be the growth of this season. It's funny because when you look at that tribe now, I feel like Helen and Sarah are going to get so lost in the mix until they're away from Carolyn, Jam Jam, and Carson, because I just feel like those 3 are such bigger personalities. I think Helen or Sarah might have the easier path to win this game. But when I look at Carson compared to Carolyn and Jam Jam, they're not really setting us up with as an underdog, which I think is really interesting because I think when you first see somebody like Jam Jam on the show, they always scream underdog who has to have a growth arc. I think Jam Jam knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly what he wants to get out of this game. I think he's going to be a power player, at least in this pre-merge phase, because everybody's kind of coming to him a little bit. But I think Carson is our growth. When I said unhinged David Wright, I think Carson's our David Wright. He's just our normal David Wright. And I think that there's a lot with him here where if Helen and Sarah do break away from Jam Jam and Carolyn, Carson's going to kind of be the swing in either position there. And I think that he's just weird enough that he gets along with the people who might be generally outcast. And I think he's just normal enough that he might get along with the people who we consider normal. I think Carson is in a perfect spot. And I had this kid as my first boot when we were doing our power rankings and everything the first time.
Now, is that pre or post pillow scandal?
That was actually post pillow scandal. So I have a Who did I have to get? I had to get a Carson pillow and put Bruce's face on it, Alexa. Is that what I was buying?
I think I was actually supposed to gift you a Carson pillow, and I really dropped the ball on that.
That's all right. Carson, if you're
put
listening.
Bruce's face on it.
Yeah.
So Carson is my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in my book, Carson is plenty safe. He claimed he put on 30 pounds in the weeks after he found out he was going to be on the show. That putting on 30 pounds of muscle takes some time. That seems like it may be a little bit of an exaggeration. Who knows? I mean, the kid got all yoked up. I mean, he's a strong looking kid, but I can't imagine that he was like that little like shrimpy weakling on the day he found out he was getting on Survivor. I think he probably was.
The photo did look older than
yeah, he was like 9 in the photo. Yeah, no, I think he well anyway.
They got a nice scrawny one.
Yeah. No, I think he's safe. I think Phil, you're probably right on the money. He's going to be somebody we're going to see a growth arc there. I don't know that I see him getting all the way to the end, but I think he's going to get far enough for them to develop that arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I do agree with you on that, because it's like he probably started working out, you got to think, when he went to casting, right? Like he goes to casting, he feels like he does a good job, and then he's probably like, all right, I'm going to go hit the gym so that like in case they call me. So maybe he already had like a 10-pound buffer there, maybe something like that. Maybe he was already doing whatever. As somebody who literally gained 30 pounds between like November 1st and like January 1st, it's possible, but I also did it from like a very unhealthy standpoint, not quite the way that he did it. So he seems like he did it regimented.
Yeah. Here's the thing though. Like, I think the logic is a little faulty. Now, if you want to just get muscled up and look cool on TV, yeah, I think he's done it right. But you either, basically, like you either want to go in kind of lean and not terribly muscly, or you want to go in like overweight, like heavy, like not muscled up, but just with extra body fat. Because when you're lean and muscly, your metabolism is just cranked up to 11. Like it's a hard thing. And so your muscles are just wanting to eat all these calories. So that's not a good place to be. Like you can have muscles, but you better have a little bit of fat on you too. Cause otherwise it's a rough go out there. And then like I said, the other way to play it is just to be kind of like the scrawny guy that doesn't need all the calories. So I don't think putting on lean muscle makes a whole lot of sense. But that was my experience, right? And when I played it, I really admired Jeremy Collins, and I remember him because he had played twice before I played, and I remember him saying that the second time he played, he decided that what he wanted to do was like restrict his calories and really work on, try to slow his metabolism, right? And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe I'll try to do that because I'm used to eating a lot. I eat a lot of food, right? So I'm like, I'm used to eating a lot of food, so maybe I'll get on the show. And all of a sudden I don't want to go from having like nearly 3,000 calories a day to having like, 200 calories a day, because that's going to be this terrible shock. So what I'll do instead is start to teach my body how to work out and do physical things with less calories. And that did not work out for me at all because, because I was lean and I was pretty muscled up, but like my metabolism was still cranked up. Like there was so I was losing weight at an alarming rate. And like by day 3, I couldn't stand up without a head rush, and like my calves would cramp all the time, and like the world was spinning all the time. So it's just not the way to go. Whereas like in my season, there were people that came in and probably did it the right way. Like Dom looked healthy on day 39, like in terms of like, that's because he was able to just kind of work it down. And that's really, I think, probably the best way to do it. I remember when I got voted out, I was talking with Dr. Joe, and he's like, listen, man, if you ever get to play this game, just come in 10 pounds heavier, and it'll make a world of difference. So anyway,
that must be the fun way to prepare for the show. Like I'm just going to put on 15 pounds of fat, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And that's what Penner did before he went out for Philippines. He said, I'm going in so that I hit my fighting weight on day 30. Because I want to be like at my regular weight with 9 days to go. And he did. If you look at Penner, he comes in big on Philippines. Yeah. And when he's going home, he's finally starting to look like the Penner we knew at the beginning of Micronesia and at the beginning of Cook Islands. And when he said that, I feel like a lot of people kind of started to take that in. But the other thing with Carson, I think, is when you or like Cole went out there, it was like, all right, where's the body fat? Like we gotta hunt for it. With Carson, I feel like because he hasn't been doing this for that long of his life, and this hasn't been something like when what Jonathan was on season 41. It's like, all right, like Jonathan is a big dude who is used to doing what he does. I feel like for Carson, he was probably just eating like white bread and like pasta and like things like that, where it was like, let me just take in as much stuff that's just gonna sit and also work out so that I look a little bit more muscular. But I think it was a little bit different of a way that he's doing it than, you know, some of the other stone figures that we see out there on Survivor. So I don't know.
All right,
that's
so
just
who are we up to now? Is
Alexa's got to do her 2.
I'll do my 2. I was gonna say, it seems like Carolyn is appreciating what Carson did in the preseason. So
yes.
He's got some fans. I'm actually going to go. No, I'm going to switch. I'm going to do 2 and 3. I have Helen and Jam Jam. So Helen at number 2, Jam Jam at number 3. I'm going to go backwards a little bit. I agree with everything that was said about Jam Jam. He's thriving. I've never heard, like, in the how many hundreds of thousands of confessionals that have been on the show, he's like, I'm from warm climate. I know how this works. And it sounds like something that's not a very big deal, but I bet that is a bit of a shock for people who are probably coming from like Brooklyn, New York or anywhere else in the city to there. He's totally fine. And I think he might not have as much of a shock with Bruce leaving, because I think he could probably relate to either side. I don't know his age, but he doesn't seem like he fits into the older crowd or the younger crowd. So I think that's going to be a really good middle position for him. And with Helen, we only got a tiny bit of her. I was really high on her preseason, but we did see her and Carolyn have a pretty direct conversation. And Carolyn was like, no one wants to talk to me. I don't really feel a connection here. And you see Helen directly lie to her. And it was one of those things where it felt like I was watching my friend. Sorry, my thing just disappeared. Like I was watching my friend talk to someone that they weren't the biggest fan of. And I knew that they were lying, but the other person didn't know that they were lying. It just felt very smooth. Who knows if it'll work out for her, but I feel like she has a pretty good sense of how to play.
Alexa, you also just described how we met. That really brought me back. Thanks. That really brought me back. But anyway, neither here nor there. That's for the patrons, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist. But I do think it's interesting with the MEM or Jam Jam. I'm going to get this right. Oh, yeah, but coming into the season,
it's really like Yum Yum, but it's more fun saying Jam Jam. So
it's not really a J sound.
Accent. Like we're all speaking with a very American accent.
Yeah. And his was like, it was more like Chom Chom. Like it was weird. Anyway,
Okay.
I'm never going to get there, but he is somebody who, when I initially look at this cast, I say, great character. See you later. Like around sometime post merge, maybe even pre merge, like whatever. You're going to be fun, but bye. You're not going to last that long. When he got that confessional about, I love the humidity, I live for bring it on. And then I start thinking about, man, Erica had like one confessional about something similar to that in her season, and Marianne had a confessional similar to that. Like, it just felt like one of those confessionals where it was like the people who are thriving in this new era tend to be the ones who do really well. And like, especially they're thriving and know who they are. Now throw everything out I just said because of Gabler last season, and he was certainly not thriving in the first 3 days.
I think he knew who he was, though.
He knew who he was, but he wasn't. He's getting ready to play his shot in the dark. He wasn't thriving, but I do think Jam Jam is thriving a little bit, and I actually think Bruce going home is a good thing for Jam Jam, because I think Bruce could have been the leader of that tribe without a doubt. There's no questions asked. I mean, he was in the Navy, and it's like, here's the older guy who's very like soft-spoken, but can lead. He's strong, all of that. Now he's gone. Who's your leader? It's not Carson, and it's not Carolyn. And now, is it going to be Sarah or Helen? Maybe. But I think Jam Jam just has such a strong personality. He almost accidentally walks into that. Now, is that going to get him voted out because now he's in like a leadership role? Maybe. But I think that it could work in his favor on a tribe with people who are all kind of, and by all, I mean Carson and Carolyn, looking for somebody to bond with so they can get further in this game. I think Jam Jam becomes that guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And on top of all that, just to make this really simple, I think if Jam Jam were getting voted out this week, last week would have been like the all Jam Jam show all the time, because they would have wanted to squeeze every ounce of Jam Jam out of the Jam Jam jar that they possibly could. He is he's just so much fun, right? Like he's so awesome. And so I think we'd know it already if he were, if he were in danger. He's not in danger. I think we got a lot more of him for the rest of this season. So yeah, he actually was not my number 3, but I just, as I'm talking about this, I'm going to put him as my number 3. And then as my number 4 is, and I'll only say it just because Alexa already mentioned her, but Helen Lee was my number 3, who I've now pushed to number 4. I think Helen Lee is definitely safe. She seems really savvy. She was super impressive in the episode. Like she had one of the most impressive episodes of anybody, I think, last week. She was great in the puzzle. She was great as the caller, like super composed. She just, there are certain people in Survivor where, and I said this last season about Carla when we were about 2/3 of the way through the season. There are certain people where like the game is kind of like slowed down for them. Like they're like things aren't like it's all chaos, right? Especially in those first 3 or 6 days, it's like it's absolute chaos. But there are certain people for whom it doesn't seem that way, right? They're seeing the world in slow motion, and they're composed and calm and they're just operating and they're comfortable. And that's where she seems to be. I mean, with what limited screen time she had, I think that's where she seems to be. So I think she's in really good shape and I think she's going to do really well. Rick Devens thinks like he's thinking that she might go all the way. So yeah, I think Helen Lee is going to be in for a long time.
For those who don't listen to Surviving Snyder, how is Rick normally as a prognosticator? Is he normally good?
Good word.
That was a 10-cent word.
I'm trying to remember. So we always make predictions, and last season, I can't remember of the 3 of us who did the best, but I think Rick's pretty good. He's got an eye. So okay. I trust it. I think that Rick's record is better than mine thus far, because last year I picked. Well, none of us picked Gabler, but who on earth picked Gabler?
Yeah.
I picked
not
Carla.
Preseason.
No, I picked Carla. Like after episode 1, I picked Carla, and then that was not such a bad guess, right? Like she made a pretty deep run, but I don't think any of us saw Gabler coming. But that's not a knock against Devens. He's solid, and I think he's onto something with Helen. So Helen is absolutely safe this week.
Yeah, no, and you can tell us what you really think about Devens when the podcast is over.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
just kidding. But Devens really caught my eye this past week when David tweeted out a picture of him with Ken, and then Devens like retweeted it and was like, yes, David and his supermodel alliance mates. That's what he does, or something like that. And it just killed me because now Devens is posting scared pictures on Instagram about him going back to school or something, and he looks like he's going to cry. It's great. I love it. So Devens always gets it, but I was just wondering like where he was at, because, maybe that'll affect where I'm at with Helen, because after listening to you both talk, I'm moving Helen and Jam up. Like I convinced myself, I already knew that I felt good about Jam, but I was still putting him in the middle because that's just what I feel like a character like Jam, that's where he has to go early in the season. But screw it. I'm going to put Jam at 4. I'm going to put Helen at 5, which for those keeping track at home, and I know I'm the only one, means I skipped my number 3. And so my number 3, though, I'm going to keep him there. And I would think about moving Jam and Helen up, but I'm going to keep him there because why the heck not? And I'm going to say Josh, because he falls into my Danny line of thinking. Who? Like what? He's there, right? Josh is there. And we all know Josh's crazy backstory with having whatever illness he had, and he had to get his entire stomach removed. There is no way Survivor is putting a person on the show who went through something like that and overcame it to go and play one of the most grueling games in the world. And they're not going to tell us all about that. Like Josh is going to have a big episode at some point. I really just think because Matt went to Advantage Island, whatever you want to call it, because he went there, he got all of the screen time from over on the Green Tribe, and Heidi got to make fire, and that was fun. But aside from that, we didn't really hear from this tribe. We really didn't even hear that much from Franny, who people are standing because she's got a big social media presence. But in terms of what we saw from episode 1, I didn't see much. I feel like because they were the only tribe to not have somebody go home, even though it was 2 hours, a lot of that was dedicated to like first of all, the chaos of Orange, but also what's going to happen to Bruce and what does that mean for the Tika tribe? And then Matthew falling off of rocks onto rocks, which just like every time I say it just makes me roll my eyes. Cause I'm like, what were you thinking? But there's just got to be more Josh coming. So I'm putting Josh at 3. And then that means Jam Jam's 4, Helen's 5. And now I am ahead of Alexa.
How far are you, Brendan? So I can know.
Josh is my number 4.
Well, Helen, you have it 4, and then you moved Josh.
Oh, sorry,
to 5,
yeah,
right?
because I moved Jam Jam up. So now Josh is 5. And the other thing I would say about Josh is that if they were going to get rid of him on Wednesday night, we would have seen a little. I mean, he was he might have been the most invisible character in the first episode. And you got to show a little something, right? I mean, you like you said, Phil, they have to invest us in his backstory even a little bit, which they didn't do. So I just can't imagine that they're going to give this guy a super invisible first episode and then kick him out second episode. I think we just haven't seen him yet. So yeah, I think he's safe.
And I think they're done doing that. I think that like people who don't have big first episodes, I don't necessarily like, especially when you have a story like Josh's. Like I think Justine had a pretty quiet first episode and then went home in the second episode, if I'm not mistaken. I can't really remember yesterday, let alone 43. But like when that happened, I'm like, she also didn't have this built-in backstory that like is so unique. And with how Survivor has been playing the backstories, I feel like Josh's is one that just has to make the edit, and they're probably not going to show it to us the episode he goes home. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I take a bit of a different angle. So for number 4, I actually have Lauren, who was very involved in this hot mess of a tribal council. But I think we are getting such a fun, sneaky villain out of her. I love that she rigged pulling rocks to be able to go to Adventure Island or the Journey or whatever it is. And now she has an extra vote because she didn't vote last week. And with all of the politics going on that tribe, and with there only being 5 of them, she can like completely control who's going to go home. And that only gets better if she doesn't use it. Because I think she can hold on to that vote for as long as she wants. So I think Lauren's good. I think there's plenty of other like fights and people that are going to be mad at each other on that tribe. Doesn't seem like she was involved in the sense that people are going to go home and point fingers at her. So I feel really good about Lauren. And then for number 5, to catch up to Phil, I actually have Heidi. She's someone that we really didn't hear a lot from, except for the fact that she started a fire, which now that I'm saying this out loud, the only thing we saw about Justine in her premiere was that she started a fire.
Yep.
So we all regret this, but I think Heidi, I like what she said of no one would ever assume that I would be the person to start a fire. No one would ever assume that I'm an engineer, let alone like an engineering manager. She has that nobody would expect this of me, and I really expect and see her growing and like making a big move because no one would ever see that coming from her.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right about that. Like, and when it was like triumphant. Like there were, it's funny in her cast photo on CBS, she's wearing this bright yellow dress. It reminds me a ton of one of my castmates, Stephanie Gonzalez, who was wearing a bright yellow dress. She went on the other, not one she picked, by the way. They picked that one for her. But anyway, but so I was like, oh man, like I don't know. I just had this kind of like immediate reaction, like, is she gonna go out first? And what's interesting about her is that, she did get kind of a little bit of a hero edit. She looked super capable out there. And she didn't, sometimes they show somebody who gets things done, but they're sort of rubbing people the wrong way. There was no negative to go with the positive, right? It was just all positive. So yeah, I think probably she's going to fly under the radar for a while. I think she probably is really comfortable and really capable out there. So I think she's not only going to be safe this week, but probably make it past the merge. And then, maybe make it deep into the game.
I do find it interesting. You mentioned that with Stephanie Gonzalez. It is interesting how much your season kind of shaped my way of thinking, because it came like when I was just far enough into doing podcasts. And so like, I'm totally in agreement with you where like, there's certain times where I see a cast photo and I'm like, Franny this season, I'm like, she's getting 8th or 7th. Like that's where she's going to finish. She's going to finish 7th or 8th. She can't go further. and she can't go earlier. Like she has to go 7th or 8th because it reminds me of Kellen. And like,
right.
It's funny how when you see those random things that remind you of something, you can't help but like use that as part of your reasoning when in reality it has nothing to do with anything. But it's just so hard to get it out of your head. I mean, I'm looking at Carson. I don't even remember who I thought he reminded me of, but I looked at him and I'm like, this is the first or second boot of this season. And then he goes out and talks. I'm like, okay, he's not whoever it reminded me of, whether that was Cochran having a panic attack in South Pacific or whatever. It wasn't that. But you're ahead of all of us because you have Carson at 6, and you already told us that. So I'll do my 6 since Alexa just did a bunch, and I'm actually going to go with Brandon. Which
I have Brandon at 6 too.
Okay, I was hoping that was going to be a hot take, but Alexa and I are just like, do you get this yet with Dalton and Devins, Brendan, where like you think you're going to have a hot take and then you're all just in agreement because you like all start to think the same things. You're morphing into each other.
Usually 2 out of 3 of us agree on something, and then the other one totally disagrees. And usually I'm the one that they're ganging up on, actually, to be honest with you. So no, we don't often agree on things on our
okay. Podcast. Well, they're survivor nerds. You know, you're that's just they have to gang up on you. But I think Brandon is in a great spot coming out of this tribal because the person who wanted him out is gone. Like the person who really wanted Brandon out of this game is gone. I think Matthew showed some allegiance to him without showing too much allegiance to him, keeping his options open, which I think is smart of Matthew. Smartest thing he did all episode, for sure, without a doubt. And I think that now you can't vote Brandon out because you're down to 5. If you lose again, now you're down to 4. You don't think a tribe swap's coming, even though we've kind of heard rumors that a tribe swap's coming. The cast hasn't heard those rumors. And in the first 3 seasons post 40, there haven't been any swaps. So you can't go down to 4 and also be without your strongest physical member, especially when Matthew's got his arm in a sling. And I actually don't think that anybody else really wanted Brandon out all that bad. I think that's why they started playing shots in the dark, and that's why Lauren banked her vote. And I don't think any of them cared enough because they all felt like it wasn't going to be them. And I think he's in a good spot now. I really do.
Yeah. If I'm Lauren, or if I'm Kane, or if I'm on that tribe and we go right back to tribal council, I'm thinking, holy crap, we just lost again. Mm-hmm. Right. So all we do is lose challenges. We just lost another one, and we got a dude with 1 arm. And like, I don't care how much I like that dude. Like, we cannot go back to tribal council another time. And so now if you vote anybody but Matthew out, right? If you're in that tribe and you go to tribal council and you vote anybody else out, now you're going into your next one with like 4 people, one of whom has 1 arm. So you're down to really 3 effective members. I don't see how and you hate to vote somebody out for that reason because it seems really short-sighted. But in this case, we were talking about how when you have 3 tribes of 6, there's nowhere to hide. Now you're really in a bad way, right? So I think if they go to back-to-back tribal councils, they just have to get rid of Matthew because otherwise it's just too scary. You don't want to be sitting there in a group of 4, likely to go to yet another tribal council at the very next opportunity.
It's James in Heroes versus Villains. They kept him as long as they possibly could. And they even voted out one of the strongest people to ever play the game of Survivor in order to keep James around. But then they lost again, and they were like, we're going to go into the merge without numbers. There's not going to be a swap. And even if there is a swap, we're all screwed. Like, it was so Heroes versus Villains, you didn't have a choice. They might feel like they have a little bit of a choice, but they don't know that there's a swap coming. And you can't plan to be Ricard and Shan. Because in all those Ricard and Shan situations, there's always a genie. There is always the third person who thought that they were going to be fine and get to the 2 and didn't. You can't just let your tribes get decimated when there's only 6 to start. So, yeah, I think Matthew's in a lot of trouble if they go back. But Alexa, why did you put Brandon at 6?
Yeah, I think kind of to everyone's point, it didn't seem like it was like he can go home because it's not me. Like, I don't think anybody really wanted him to go home. I also think I don't know how like his body works, but I think like challenges moving forward are not going to be this physical. I feel like there's always a super physical premiere. So I think he'll be able to get back into the groove of being really strong in challenges. So I don't think that's going to be, I'm on my iPad instead of my computer because it's broken. It just fell. I don't think like the physical aspect is going to be a problem. And I don't think people are necessarily viewing him as like this huge strategic threat. Like, he wanted the idol cage because he thought it would help the tribe. That's the most like innocent interpretation of that idol cage of anybody else on the island. So I think people will probably view him more as he just wants to be here. He's like, maybe wants to be a number. I don't think he really wants to be the center of attention. So he's probably going to take a step back, and like Kane is going to have a lot of heat on him. Jamie's going to have a lot of heat on her. There's a lot of other people to worry about instead of him.
Yeah. Who do you have at 7, Brendan?
I have Franny. So I think Franny is, I think she's safe. I think she's not going anywhere. It's funny that you said that, Phil, that you're like, your brain goes automatically to like, 7th, 8th place. I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Probably for this, if I'm being honest, probably for the same reason. Although I will say this, I had the good fortune to meet Franny just very briefly. And she is, and I know Kellen, and they have similarities for sure, right? Like they're both down to like physically, they're both, I don't know. I mean, you've both met Kellen, yeah?
Yeah.
Have you? She's taller than you'd think from TV. Like she's probably 5'9" or so. So she's tall-ish. Franny is tall. They're and they both have that kind of goofy thing going on, but Kellen has more edge to her. Like, I mean, at least in the limited interaction I had with Franny and what we've seen on TV and how she kind of presents herself. Kellen, right out of the gate, like on our season, she's making fun of ugly babies, and she's, like there was just like there's that little bit of edge, which I got to know more even outside the game, and I don't mean this as a criticism. Like it's like I admire it. Like she's cool. Like she's but it's like quirky and edgy at the same time. And Franny's just kind of goofy and quirky. I don't see and so I think they're similar, but not the same. I
think the age difference there probably has a big impact because Franny is much younger than Kellen was when Kellen played Survivor.
Yeah.
Because Franny's 23. I think Kellen was 30, wasn't she? Or 29?
I think she was probably in her late 20s.
Was she in her late 20s? Either way, early 20s to late 20s, you go through some changes there. But I think that's good insight though, because I've met Kellen a bunch of times, and I think Kellen, like you're right, she does have that little bit of like bite to her that you're not expecting necessarily, like where she will tell you how it is, and you're not getting kind of that goofy. Where Franny, I wasn't sure if it was just being played up, but even in that, I saw that same article you saw about here's the 3 female LGBTQ players on this season. Even the picture they chose for that, it's like, who is this goofball? Like she's not even like, she's not even serious in that photo, where like they take like the best looking photo of Claire, and like Carolyn obviously is just like Carolyn at this point, where everybody's just going to find the craziest pictures they can. But Franny looks like she's just having a blast in that photo. And that's like what her personality is going to be. But again, it's hard to know how much is she playing that up for TV? How much of that is just in the edit because they want to create kind of a fan favorite? And how much of that is really who she is?
Now, having said all that and talked about the differences between the two people, I still have this gut feel that she's going to end up like 7th place.
7th or 8th. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And if you learned one thing from Kellen, it's what, Brendan? Trust your gut.
You gotta trust your gut.
Trust your gut, and your gut says it. Alexa, who do you have at 7?
I have Sarah at number 7. I'm a little surprised she hasn't come up yet. First of all, she has a pretty ridiculous advantage. I don't see why it would be coming up anytime soon. Feel like it's probably not going to come out until the post-merge. But I think all we saw from her was like pretty even-keeled, like went to Advantage Island and like didn't really like have too much of an opinion either way. I don't know. I feel pretty good about her, and I just don't really know why she would go home. It's like I'm at that point in the power rankings where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
somebody from Tika has to go home if Tika loses, right?
Yeah.
And I already have Jam, Helen, and Carson. And like I feel kind of like with Brendan, I'm like, okay, Carolyn's gonna stay around a little bit too. So like, does that mean Sarah has to go home? Like, or maybe Tika just doesn't go back to tribal, but in these early stages, I like to have at least 1 or 2 people from each tribe kind of in my bottom 7. And that's why I can't put Sarah up there. Now, Brendan, what do you think about this advantage that she got? And do you think it's actually going to be played successfully or no?
Yeah, I wonder whether she's going to get a chance to play it. If it's her this week, it's not getting played because she's, she'll never have a chance to play it. But I don't even think if she goes home this week, I think she doesn't see it coming.
Yeah.
okay, that Carolyn in her pregame stuff, like they have all these questions like, what's something somebody would be surprised to know about you? And like her answer was like, I'm graduated like summa cum laude and I'm a management consultant or something. Like that's exactly what I would think by looking at you. Like, like that's what you look like. So, and because of that, because she's super, and I'm sure has accomplished many, many great things in her life and has worked very hard for all those things. But she's been on that path, and she's with a bunch of big personalities. And I could see somebody who's, and I don't know where she probably went to Harvard Business School with James or something, right? Like that's who this is. I'm guessing she hasn't had as much occasion in life to spend time with the likes of Carolyn and Jam Jam and others, like these kind of off the wall personalities. And for that reason, I'm going to say maybe that connection, like maybe she's not making that connection. Now I could be totally off base here, like 100%. We just haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen that she's making these personal connections with people. And in the first couple of votes in Survivor, that's all it is, right? There's typically no good reason to vote anyone out. Like, it's just kind of like, I don't know, I've seen to have a connection with you, so let's get that guy or whatever. So, so I'm going to say maybe she isn't making the connection with these over the top personalities because that's not the social sphere that she's in typically, the world that she operates in. And so I don't have her rated quite as highly. I have her, she is actually closer to the bottom for me in terms of how safe she is.
We finally diverted.
Everything you just said, though, makes me worried for Helen and Sarah, because something that I just remembered is Sarah doesn't have a vote. So if Carson, Jam Jam, and Carolyn do team up as kind of like this odd throuple, I don't know how else, to put that. But if the three of them team up, they have their choice because there's only one vote between those other two people. Now, they might not know. I don't know. Do they know that Sarah lost her vote? Did she show them who lost the vote?
I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Well,
but
there's not many votes on that tribe.
There's only 4 votes on that tribe, and nobody's going to do a 2-2 split this early. So, yeah. My number 7, I have Lauren. And Alexa, I know you already touched on Lauren. I think quietly Lauren was the MVP of this first episode. She got what she wanted. She was able to bank her vote. She now has 2 votes on a 5-person tribe. And Brendan, like you said, if you go to tribal council tonight, tomorrow night, whatever, Wednesday night, you have to vote out Matthew because he's got 1 arm. And so if you're looking at Matthew being injured and Lauren has 2 votes, I don't even think she needs to play her second vote now. I think she can wait. And if there is any doubt and they say, no, we want to keep Matthew, she can go to Jamie and she can go to Kane because Kane is definitely on the outside and say, we could either be a group of 3 or I have an extra vote and you guys don't have a say anyway. Like, what would you rather do? We can use this extra vote further down the line. I think she's kind of in the power position on that tribe, but I still put her at 7 because I don't know who she's aligned with. I don't know what her relationships are with anybody on that tribe at all.
Yeah. I think that Lauren, so I'll go 10. What number am I up to, by the way?
You're on number 8. So you
number
just
8?
did. Yeah, you just did Franny.
So I would go Lauren and Kane, like as a tandem, like back to back, because for the reason we just talked about, like, I just don't see that tribe voting anybody if they go this week. Now, it's one thing if they go, 3 votes from now, but if they go, and by then it sounds like the word is maybe the deck will have been shuffled by then anyway. But if they go to tribal council like this vote, I just don't see how anybody but Matthew gets voted out. So for that reason, and so I don't think that Kane and Lauren, otherwise I wouldn't say that they're terribly safe, even with Lauren having that extra vote, because she seems to have like a confidence to her that might lead her to get a little bit too aggressive and want to wait too long to play that thing. But I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters for that tribe right now because they've just, if they go right back to tribal council, they have to get rid of Matthew.
I think we all know where Brendan's going with this, everybody. Just in case you didn't know, in case you wanted to tune into his number 16, I think he's giving you hints here. But yeah, I worry a little bit more for Kane because Kane is the only one going back to tribal council who actually voted with Maddie. Everybody else did their kind of own thing and whatever. And I think that Kane he's in the hot seat when he gets back to tribal. Now, how is he going to rebound from that? I think he can rebound fine. but he's in the hot seat, and that's what concerns me for Kane going into that. My number 8, I have Heidi at 8, and then I have Franny at 9. So kind of like I said, my bottom 7, I have at least 2 people from each tribe. So Franny and Heidi, I think, are safer than Claire and Matt. I think Matt might be getting played here, and I think that Claire is already sitting out challenges, and she's tweeting all about how Sandra and Courtney sat so she could sit. She's doing a lot of those things, which are great. But if she really is, if she was going into this game knowing physically she was going to be one of the weaker players, and she's on a tribe that already has a person advantage, they could just say, hey, we're going to cut you loose. So that's why I don't use her in this situation. I have Heidi and Franny. Heidi first because we got the fire making. Franny second because we really didn't get much, although it seems like we're about to have a lot more of that. But every time there's one of these showmances that we actually see, what was the last one? Was it Figgy and Taylor? And Figgy went home pre-merge. So I do worry a little bit for Franny if that is the case, but I don't worry for her in this episode.
Yeah, I think there's still, like, if this even becomes a showman's, it's like, I feel like 9 times out of 10, it's the woman who goes home and not the man. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it also doesn't happen that exact same episode. Like, they give it a sec and then they'll vote them out. But yeah, I agree. I don't really know if it's actually going to happen. I actually have Claire at my number 8. Honestly, because she can create problems that aren't even her problems somewhere else. So if her name ever came up, I think she'd find a great way to deflect it onto somebody else. Unclear if that actually will happen in practice, but I think like a little bit paired with her social media presence, but mostly, I don't know. She's like, I don't know if anyone's called her Chaos Claire yet, but I feel like that's what we're going to get with her.
She's certainly working that way. What did you think about her decision to tell some secrets over there on the sit-out bench, Brandon?
I think it's a good call because it doesn't hurt her. It could hit her in the long run, but that would require both her and Matthew to like get to the merge and everyone figures it out. Matthew, like, I think he's the one in trouble because like they're going to say, how did you find that out? Why did you end up acting this way? She also got a potential alliance member in Matthew too. So I loved it.
I think there's risk and not a lot of reward in the short term. And what she's banking on, I would assume, is that she's going to make it to a merge. I mean, I don't know that they're all, like you said it, Phil, I don't think they're counting on the tribes being shuffled before they merge. So if I were out there, I'd be thinking, okay, we're going to merge at some point, and I want to have an instant connection with this guy when it happens. But those are long odds because you're counting on him being there. You're counting on you being there. And what you've done is, maybe you've sort of disrupted things in another tribe, but who cares? Like, how does that help you at all? All it does is sort of put you at risk. And if he walks back and tells his tribe, like, hey, listen to what she said, all of a sudden she's got a tension that she doesn't need or want going into a merge. I just think there's more to be lost than there is to be gained. Rick said it on our podcast, like it's good for TV. I'm not sure how good it is for her game at this point. And so if that is an indicator of the way she's going to play, I think it's going to be really entertaining and a lot of fun. But it could be that, she's going to be somebody who wants to go out there and make moves, and it's entertaining. But she may make one too many. There's a difference between being aggressive and being reckless. And so it'll be interesting. I think these next couple of episodes are going to tell us the story about whether she is just aggressive and has got a plan, or if she's reckless. And my gut feel is that she's a little bit reckless in a fun way, which would be great for TV, but maybe not so good for her.
I would love to hear I hope we talk to her this next episode to hear, like, did she plan this in advance? Well, like, it would make sense because it had such an impact on the vote.
And she was another one who really didn't talk. Like, she really didn't say much to us in confessionals this episode. And that she's on that green tribe, but to have such a big moment and have a moment that really did impact how people were kind of viewing Lauren coming back. I mean, her name got tossed around a little bit because of that. for Claire to not really have much was kind of surprising. And we do see more often than not the person who tries to talk between tribal lines get caught and like it hurts them, at least when it's shown on TV. Maybe Claire is not going to go that same direction, but that does happen more often than not.
Yeah. So for Claire, Claire is actually, for me, she's number 14.
Okay.
Because I think we got our introduction, and if it is her, we're going to see a ton of her in the first half of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So if we see a ton of Claire content first half, we know I think she's in deep trouble.
Yeah.
They've got to vote somebody out, right? And so I don't know. I think she's as likely as anybody.
Do you think the Green Tribe is in danger, though, of losing to these other two tribes, or do you think these other two tribes are in more trouble right now?
It's so hard to know. I mean,
so hard.
It just all depends on what the challenge is. You would think that they're probably not in danger, but I don't know. It's hard to say. But I think if they do go to tribal council, Claire's as likely as anybody.
Mm-hmm. Alexa, who do you have at 9?
I have Josh at number 9. We didn't hear from him. We've kind of already spoken about him a bunch, but I have him like pretty much exactly in the middle. I really just don't have a lot there.
Mm-hmm. So now we're finally into double digits. Brendan, who's your number 10?
Number 10, I've got Heidi, but it's just because she was so on the outs in episode 1. I mean, I'm kind of going against what I said before, which is that, if that tribe goes, it's got to be the guy with one arm. Mm-hmm. But Heidi, at least from post-show press, it sounds like she had a good reason to play her shot in the dark.
Oh, you're thinking of Jamie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie. Jamie.
Yeah.
Sorry, Heidi. I didn't mean you. I mean Jamie. No, Heidi, we talked about it. I think Heidi's going deep in the game.
You haven't had Heidi listed yet, though.
Oh.
We got
in that case, so sorry. This is what happens when I did do limited show prep. So in that case, so Jamie, I should have listed her already. Sorry, Jamie. No, sorry, Heidi. Yeah. Heidi is yellow dress. Yes.
Yes.
Started the fire. Okay, here we go.
You talked about her, but didn't actually rank her.
Okay, Heidi's in good shape. Heidi's my next number. Whatever number is available next in the order of things. I probably should have put her higher than this, but Heidi, you're next. You're not going anywhere. I would be shocked if she's going anywhere. So I've tipped my hand on Jamie.
Okay, so you're gonna have Jamie at 11 then. So you're gonna go Heidi then Jamie, and just assumed that you'd already mentioned, because you did actually talk all about like how much you liked Heidi, and I thought it was coming. And you were like, "Yeah, I got Carson, and then Franny, and then Lauren, and then Kim."
Yeah.
He doesn't like Heidi that much.
Because what's happening is I'm crossing off names after I talk about people. So I crossed off Heidi's name, and then I had the whole confusion of Heidi, Jamie. But anyway,
there's mine.
If people aren't thoroughly confused, I just did it. But yeah, so I probably would have put Heidi higher. Mm-hmm. I just thought I'd already mentioned her. So yeah, so Heidi, I'll put her at whatever place that is, 10th place or whatever.
So 10 for Heidi, 11 for Jamie. Alexa, who's your 10? And I guess you can do your 11 too if you want to.
Yeah, so they same tribe, same first letter. I have Carolyn at number 10 and Carson at number 11. Both of them I think are generally pretty safe, but they are the lowest I have for that tribe. Carolyn, I have to plug Jeff's podcast right now, which was so good. I loved it. Also, I promise there's a reason that I'm saying this. The producer who he talks to, Jay Wolf, used to be the producer on my favorite podcast, more so than my own podcast. He used to do a podcast with Katie Nolan on ESPN. And so I know him. I like him. Anyways, the podcast was fantastic. And Jeff was giving a teaser for this next episode. And he said something along the lines of, there's a player that you love and you are going to fall in love this next episode. And I feel like this is probably going to be like Carolyn's big coming out episode, or like her big story. I'm probably going to cry a lot. And so I don't think, like we talked about, why would she go home? Because she seems like the character of the season. Why would they have us fall in love with her and then send her home? Carson, I liked him a lot more than I thought I was, if I'm going to be completely honest. But in a lot of his confessionals, talking to us and talking about strategy, I did get a little bit of like cockiness, and I know that that's probably like, I'm on TV, I got to do it. Like, I'm sure I would do the exact same thing, but I could see him maybe overestimating himself and getting outplayed. I don't think either of them will go home, but I'm a little lower on Carson than you guys are.
I can't believe you just mentioned Jeff's podcast while we have a podcast host as our guest, Alexa. I mean, come on. Now you're just taking views away. I know.
Trio we've got. Did anyone else listen?
I listened to some.
Yeah,
I didn't listen to the whole thing. I did listen to some of it.
I liked it. It made me like Survivor more than watching Survivor, if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys.
No, I liked it. So I'm not here to plug Jeff's podcast, but I will say this. I was out there. I saw how it works, like from behind the curtain. And despite that, I still love hearing all the behind the curtain stuff. Like, I love it. You know, it's so I can't get enough of it. It's a lot of fun. And I like the angle. Like, if there, you know, there's no sense in Jeff going out there and doing an episode recap, you know, or predictions or whatever. What we want from him is what's the stuff that you can't get from watching it or looking at post-game press. And that's what he gave us. So I think it was, mission accomplished, and I'll keep tuning in.
Yeah, no, I think everybody kind of like was all over. Oh no, it's the first official Survivor podcast. I mean, it is the first official Survivor podcast, but it's also something completely different. And he's not just trying to like take over the realm that's already been like established in the world. And I think that's good, because I think he is, and it seems like, based on what I listened to in this first podcast, it does seem like he's actually giving a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain than I actually thought he was going to. I thought he was going to be a little bit more reserved and hidden, and it actually seemed like he was willing to talk. I mean, he did invite Bruce back live, which I don't know if that means like you better be prepping for Bruce to be on season 45.
Right.
But he was giving a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain than he needed to for this to be successful.
Yeah, I'm 98% bought in. The other 2% will be in if Jeff does a Why Jeff Sucks segment and like doesn't get a softball question, then I'm all in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well,
all right. I'll go to my 10. I have Carolyn. Again, I have her only low because I wanted to have two people from this tribe low, but I do think that things have worked out for her, especially with Sarah not having a vote. And then at number 11, and I don't want to put this person at number 11, but I feel like I don't have a choice, because I understand that there's been like this Monday morning quarterbacking of why this person did what they did, but I have Jamie at 11, and I just don't like, I don't know. Like, the editors aren't showing her to be a smart player. They're showing her to be an emotional, chaotic player. And if her reasoning really was as clean cut as what Matthew said on Twitter, which was she was the first target and Jamie was actually going to have a chance to win this game, the producers would have told us, hey, smart move by Jamie, because she actually was going to be the first target. And even though it didn't nullify votes, her saying she was going to play the shot in the dark scared people. Instead, we didn't get that. We got a very anticlimactic first shot in the dark success.
Yay.
And I'm not buying it. And now, Brendan, I know you have her in the same spot, and you were half talking about her, half talking about Heidi. So now you can jump in with her at number 11. You were kind of saying, though, that it made sense why she played this.
Yeah. So here's the deal. The reason you don't play your shot in the dark is because you either want to save your vote and you think that your vote's going to matter, or because you want to save it for later in the game. And I would argue that if she knew that she was the one that was going to be getting a bunch of the votes, or at least that was the talk, you know, if she had sort of reliable intel that was the deal, then whether or not she had a vote in that situation wouldn't have mattered, right? So if she had her own vote or she didn't, she's probably still getting the boot. And so at that point, you do anything you can, and the only thing you can, to stay in the game 3 more days.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if I were in her shoes and I felt like I had reliable intel that it was me, I would have, I think, had to do the same thing. And so I don't blame her for doing it. I think it makes sense. And yeah, it's cool to save it for later if you're going to be around later. But the last thing, nobody wants to be the first one voted out. And I know Bruce is already gone, but there's something about being the first one voted out that just sucks. Like that's every Survivor player's worst nightmare. And so you got to do what you got to do to avoid that fate. And if she had been told it was her, then I don't I'm not mad at her for playing it. I think it was the right thing to do. Now, as it turns out, votes were going a different direction, but you can only go with the information you have. So I guess if you're going to give her any blame, the blame is, you trusted Maddie when she told you, or like whatever the scuttlebutt was. Because I don't know if Maddie was claiming that she tipped Jamie off that she was on the way out, or I'm not sure where she was getting that information, but at least that's the story that's been told after the episode.
From one person. Yeah.
I was going to say something, but I'll wait until I get to that person.
Okay. Well, Brendan, who do you have at 12?
Okay, so do me a favor, because I don't want to screw this up any worse. Who are the players that I have left at my disposal? Because I don't want to now say somebody twice or what.
All right, so here's who you've done, because this will make it easier. But you've done Carolyn, Danny, Jam, Helen, Josh, Carson, Franny, Lauren, Kane, Heidi, Jamie, and then we know Claire is going to be your 14. So you should have Matt, Matthew, Sarah, and Brandon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna say Brandon next.
Okay.
For all the the reason we keep talking about, which is if that tribe goes back, they've got to get rid of the one-armed man. So Brandon's next for no other reason than that. It doesn't seem to me like Brandon has made huge connections with the other people in his tribe. It doesn't seem like he's on the outs exactly, but I don't know that he's really in either. That's a dysfunctional tribe, and so I would normally be inclined to put all of the remaining members of that tribe in my bottom 5 or bottom 6, except for the fact that one of them, has only one shoulder in the socket.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. And the difference here, like I know Steph LaGrossa was like tweeting out her getting her shoulder popped back in on Heroes versus Villains. I think the difference here is he is very visibly injured. He's walking around with it in a sling. And I talked about this on the previous podcast because I have this problem. What do they call it? The subflexion or whatever, where it pops out all the time and it's so obnoxious. And I remember when I went to my doctor, I went to a chiropractor to like work on it. And he was like, dude, take it out of the sling. Like it's going to weaken the muscle, whatever. And while I don't necessarily think that's the reason you don't keep it in a sling on Survivor, I think the reason you don't keep it in a sling on Survivor is, why are you advertising that you're injured? That is the biggest thing for me. Like I remember when James tore his ACL, he went and sprinted against JT to try to prove a point. And JT ran backwards and beat him on the beach. But I feel like on Survivor, you don't, especially in the pre-merge phase, you don't want to be advertising that you're not well. Because when you advertise that you're not well, you go home. We almost always see the sick person go home. We almost always see somebody who does any type of minor injury to themselves go home. Now, if you're Missy and you're at Final 5 or whatever it is and you tear your Achilles, go ahead and limp around, because at that point, nobody cares that you're there. It's at this early stage of the game, especially on a tribe that just lost. Why are you wearing it that like you're injured? That's, I think, what's confusing me the most about how Matthew's handling this. And he can't
They
be
might
being
be making him. They might be making him.
I was going to say that, but then here's my other thing. If they were going to make him, they'd give him a real sling. I don't think they'd be having him use his shirt.
Maybe, that's fair. But maybe they want to be like, it's Survivor. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I haven't mentioned Matthew's name yet, so we're all on a similar page here.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the next one here? So the next one is, Alexa, you or me. You want to do your 12?
Yeah, I have Franny at number 12, which is like pretty darn low for someone who I think is probably fine. But we have nothing to go off of, and I have to take like any form of drama. And I'm putting her low. I also haven't mentioned Matt's name yet. I have her just pretty low because she might be in a situation with somebody who has no votes for 2 straight tribal councils. So I think they really trust each other, but she might end up being stuck because I'm sure he's going to tell her, and then she might not want to vote against him, and then that could inevitably get her in trouble. Because a lot of people who have no votes end up surviving just fine. It ends up being somebody else who gets hit. So yeah, I have Franny at number 12.
I really want like a love story on Survivor of the likes of Rob and Amber. But I'm going to be honest, the more you all talk about this, she is the femme fatale to Matt. Like, Matt is so screwed. He is walking straight into oncoming traffic. Like, he is doomed. Tall Matt is doomed because of this. And the more you all talk about it, like, I didn't really initially have this thought. Matt doesn't have a vote for 2 consecutive tribal councils. He's now got goo eyes over Franny. He's going to tell her he doesn't have a vote for 2 straight tribal councils, exactly like Alexa just said. And then Franny can say, okay, I'll try to help you. Or she's going to go back to the rest of the tribe and say, Matt doesn't have a vote for 2 straight tribal councils. We don't have to get rid of him now, but we can get rid of him the next time. It doesn't really matter. He's going to give that information to somebody who is unknowingly playing the Parvati shallow role, which really makes me laugh because I don't think there's anybody that Franny would say she's more opposite than Parvati, just based on the personality she portrays. But I think Matt is letting his guard down with Franny. And when you don't have votes, you can't let your guard down with anybody in the game of Survivor. Man, so the more we talk about it, I'm like, man, am I going to put Matt below Matthew? Like, is Green going to tribal and Matt is going home? I'm going to put, before we get into that though, I'm going to put Kane at 12. And the only reason I have him this low is because he was the one sole wrong vote at the last tribal council. Now, granted, there were only 3 votes, so it's not really his fault, but he is the only one that everybody knows voted for Brandon. And everybody else can go back and say, wow, Brandon, we didn't know it was going to be you. That's BS, man. Like, I can't believe they tried to pull that on you. Everybody can say that except for Kane. And they could all vote out Brandon the next time. But like we talked about, why would you get rid of your strongest member when you have somebody there with the shoulder out and everything like that? I think Kane is in the most danger other than Matthew, because if Brandon says, I want to get my way, I want to vote out the person who voted for me, they might not have a choice but to side with him and vote out Kane.
Not to jump too far ahead, I have Kane at number 13 for kind of a similar reason, but he's not the lowest one I have on that tribe because he seems like his actions are very well thought out. Like, you hear him say that he didn't want to vote for Brandon for this exact reason. So I do believe that, like, he is convincing enough. He is fresh out of law school, and Brandon is reasonable enough where, I mean, this is going to be a hard thing to say, but like, everyone was going to vote for Brandon, allegedly, and then they didn't. He just got, like, caught in the crossfire. He can, like, blame other people for it. Maybe, like, oh, they told him to do it, and then they ended up not voting. I don't think he's in a good position, but I do think I do think he might be okay.
I have a question, and this is a total hypothetical, and I know we're long into the podcast, but since we're almost at the end, I just thought of it. If everybody elected not to vote at that tribal council, what would they do? Like, if everybody played their shot in the dark, like, because we were almost at this, we only had 3 votes out of 6 people. We were very close to having a situation where, like, if there was enough paranoia, Kane could have said, I'm not playing. I'm not going to vote. I'm going to play my shot in the dark. Even if just Kane plays it, what happens with Maddie and Brandon if Brandon doesn't play his idol? You know what I mean? Like, it's just a very weird situation that, like, we haven't seen yet. Are we inching towards that where at the first tribal council, everybody's gonna be like, well, we're too, like, gung-ho about just sitting around the campfire and all of us are just going to play our shots in the dark? Like, what would you do then?
So but you have to reveal publicly that you're playing your shot in the dark, right?
No.
I don't think you do.
No, they are all just doing, every time we've seen them reveal it publicly, it's because they want it to be public. Like, Sammy announced it because he was trying to convince them to not vote for him because he knew they were voting for him. Same thing with Zach. And I think Jamie was in the same boat where she was concerned and she did it. But all you have to do is walk up there and plop it in. I think Sydney did it secretly, and that's why she ended up going home.
See, that brings up a really interesting, like, sort of game theory situation, right? Because if we're all sitting around, let's say the 3 of us and a couple more people are sitting around the fire and we're like, hey, I'm thinking about, what if we all just play it?
Yeah.
I just got to be the one that doesn't play it. Because then,
be the one who doesn't.
All I got to do is be the one who doesn't. And then, like, I vote for Phil. And, you know, Phil's got a 5 and 6 chance of being gone, right? So
why would you vote for me? I don't understand.
So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what would happen there. That's an interesting question.
It is a great game theory thing, though. You're right, because everybody could sit there and say it. You're gonna get one person, though. If you took, just for the sake of this, your podcast and me and Alexa, an intern, and all 6 of us sat down and we said, we're all going to play our shot in the dark. one of the 6 of us is going to vote for somebody else.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
I bet Jeff makes them vote.
But if it didn't happen, yeah, I guess, Alexa, that's my question. Would he make them vote?
I bet he would. Like, what else are they going to do?
And then they all just get their shot in the dark back?
I don't know.
Or, if everybody, I mean, I guess maybe the fairest thing to do would be, okay, let's say that we all secretly do our shot in the dark, right? So now none of us have a vote. Like none of us have voted. If I were Jeff, I might say, okay, here's the deal. You all now, because nobody voted, we're all on equal footing. So everybody's going to vote, right? So you all gave up your vote, but now, we have to have votes cast. So we're going to go back into the voting booth. You each are going to, your shot in the dark is going to work if it works.
Yeah.
If your 1 in 6 comes up, but we're all going to vote. I don't know. I mean, I think that's because, again, everybody's on equal footing there. We've all done the same thing, right? So we all didn't have a vote together. So now we all do have a vote together, and you see what happens. And then you're playing the game with the dice. So yeah, that's really interesting though. I mean, I'm sure. I wonder, that is such an odd scenario. I wonder if they've thought that one through. I have to think they probably have.
They have to have a plan for it. Yeah,
they have to have a plan for it. I'm gonna see if I can get Dalton. Dalton can occasionally ask Jeff these questions, so I'm gonna pose that question to Dalton. I will give Phil full credit for this question because I think it's a good one.
Yeah, he doesn't even have to mention our podcast. Just give me the credit.
No, I got you, man. I'm going to talk about this question on our podcast on Wednesday night, and I will ask Dalton.
I love it.
The survivor specialists need to know.
We need to know. I always wonder with that stuff because they screwed up so bad in the early days with the Lex, Ethan, Big Tom thing. They screwed that up so bad, and they screwed up so bad the next season with the Pascal Rock. Because he wasn't supposed to draw a rock. They got the rules wrong. So you have to think in this day and age where everything is so nitpicked and people are taking out lawsuits against everybody for everything, they have to have a plan for what would happen if on one of these early small tribes, everybody played their shot in the dark. They have to have one. Anyway, my number 13, I am going to go with Matt. And even though I just almost talked myself into putting him in last place, I'm going to put him here. Because I think the one thing that is helping him is I think he is going to be so honest when he does tell Franny that he doesn't have a vote for 2 straight tribals, that she's not going to have a choice but to believe him, and she's going to believe him. And that's actually going to save him for their first tribal, because they're going to say, hey, we don't need to get rid of him this time. He doesn't have a vote for the next one either. So let's get rid of somebody who can actually be threatening, which in this situation I have as being Claire. And let's get her out and keep Matt and see if we can at least get to the merge. Because then if we get to the merge, he still doesn't have a vote. But if we go to one more tribal and we don't trust him, then we'll vote him out of the game. I think him not having it for 2, it's almost like Noble in your season. Noble would have been better off only having his idol good for 1 tribal. Matt is better off not having a vote for 2 tribals than he would be if he didn't have a vote for just 1 tribal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have Matt in the 15 spot.
Okay.
So yeah, for all the reasons that you've described, I mean, he's in a rough spot. He just looks like he's being set up for an early exit. He seems, by the way, to be super likable. Like it's easy to root for this guy. So I don't hope for this fate, but yeah, just watching the way things seem to be panning out, you could see him being sort of played in this episode. And hopefully I like him. So hopefully I'm wrong, but yeah, he's in my 15 spot.
Yeah. So who do you have at 13?
13 is Sarah. I haven't said Sarah, right?
Nope. So Sarah at 13 and Matthew all the way back at 6.
Yeah. So Sarah. So I think that there's a chance that her really potentially amazingly powerful advantage goes unused, and that she's just gone before she has the chance, which would be a shame. Like I want to see it get played at least. I want to see it get played. So, because it'll be spectacular. Like if somebody plays it like, oh, this is the tribal council, it's gonna be so great, and they think they're gonna get loaded up with 2 or 3 advantages, and then they get nothing. That'll be fun. If somebody gets loaded up with a couple, actually, I don't really want to see somebody walk out of tribal council with like 4 advantages in their pocket.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, well, where do you go from there? Like, how do you make a compelling storyline there forward when you can essentially just roll out an advantage one after the next for like the next 4 tribal councils to keep yourself around? So I hope it doesn't pan out that way. But in any case, Sarah just we have not been made to invest emotionally in her yet. It doesn't mean it won't happen. You can't do that with everybody in episode 1. So it may simply be that they just didn't have time to get us. But we did see her, right? I mean, she was part of the journey or whatever they're calling it. And so, there was the opportunity for us to really hook, get our hooks into us and really kind of invest in Sarah. And I just didn't feel it coming out of the episode. And it's it's not Sarah's fault. I just don't feel like that's the way the edit went. So I could see her as being somebody that they introduced her. She's got this advantage. We're going to watch it go to waste. I don't think she's going. I think it's more likely either Matt or Matthew, but I could see her going home this week.
Yeah, I have Sarah in spot 14. And then I have Claire in 15 and Matthew in 16. Sarah is another, I didn't have Sarah this low when we started this podcast, but after yakking for 94 minutes, you all convinced me. Alexa, it really wasn't until you put Sarah at 7 that I was like, wait, what? Is she actually safe this week or is she in danger? Because I came into this thinking, man, I like Sarah. She had a quiet first episode and everything, but now I'm starting to think, maybe it's a bad thing she had a quiet first episode because she did go on the journey and maybe she should have gotten more. And while Lauren's advantage is great for her right now, she already has 2 votes. Sarah's advantage might not be useful until final 7 of this game. That's the last time she can play it, by the way. The picture of the parchment said final 7. But she might never, even if she uses this, she might never actually get to reap the benefits of it because she could use it and be voted out at the tribal council that she uses it. This is a useless advantage 95% of the time. And she lost a vote to get it. So she doesn't have a vote to get this. And now she has to sit there and say, okay, how do I spin this to vote out somebody else without having a vote? Why not just vote her out? So that's why I have her there. And then I have Claire at 15 because I think, like we said, she's kind of instigator here, which I don't know if that's a good thing. Like you said, Brendan, a little reckless. And then 16, Matthew, because he's injured because he fell off a rock.
Yeah, so mine, just to make sure it's all clear. So I went Sarah 13, Claire 14, Matt 15, and Matthew 16. And isn't it interesting that look at where we have the people who went on this journey to go get advantages. It's not working out for most of them, at least as far as we're predicting. They're in trouble. If we're right, they're in trouble. So Matt potentially on the outs, Sarah potentially on the outs. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, the journey. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna take this time to jump on the journeys. I'll do that another time. But it definitely you just go and lose a vote now. I feel like that's all
sucks.
that happens now. And now there's even less talent or strategy. It's literally just pick something and then decide if you want to do that again. But anyways, I finish up Matt 14, Matthew 15, Jamie 16. I think Matt not having a vote for 2 weeks in a row is really, really tough. He's very endearing. There doesn't seem to be anything apart from that would make him a threat or make him need to leave. Matthew, on the other hand, I feel like a lot of explaining that he has to do, and there's a lot of pieces he's going to have to move around because he kept himself loyal to Brandon, but not really in the way that I think Brandon would have hoped or wanted. And with Jamie, honestly, according to Maddie, and Matthew, it sounds like she was the first name that was thrown out, but she's someone who still chose to play her shot in the dark and didn't know that you can sort of the target can move. I just don't think that's a good alliance member, and I think she's in a lot of trouble.
What's going to shoot all this for me, and I think Phil both, is that if the episode opens up and we see Matthew, climbing trees and scrambling around and looking like he's no problem, right? Well, that shoots everything, right? Because I my whole ranking system and a lot of this stuff is contingent on him actually being injured and not being able to use both arms. So if he can use both arms, if it's just kind of they were playing it up and he was wearing the sling because it's hey, it'll look cool on TV, but then he's yeah, I'm done with the sling and he's fine. Well, then I think I could see Jamie being in trouble for sure.
I think it could take him a while. I mean, it took Daniel Strunk a really long time to kind of get over his dislocated shoulder. And Stephanie, I think, is just like a machine. So I don't think that was an option for
Well,
her.
and Alexa, like to your point though, Stephanie's was a situation where hers had happened a bunch before going out on the show. So she had a similar situation what I have, where it's like it just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And she was used to that. I don't think Daniel had ever had it happen before, and Matthew definitely had never had it happen before. So I think when it's the first time, you really don't know what to expect because, Brendan, I don't know if you've ever done it, but the first time that happens, you literally you feel like you're going to pass out. You feel like you're going to throw. It's brutal. Yeah. And then the next time it happens, you're like, okay, this sucks, but I kind of know what to take from this. But after you do it the first time, that is so tender. And like the next 24 hours, 48 hours are so key to not popping it out again because it oftentimes that'll happen again. And that's what Stephanie, she said, I think in her Heroes vs. Villains stuff that she was worried about that. So I do think Matthew, like if he tries to overdo it, especially in a challenge, he's probably going to end up hurting his tribe more than helping his tribe too, which is going to really reveal how injured he is. But then like Brendan said, maybe he just comes around and he's superhuman and everything's fine. And now we all look like idiots because we all put him down there at number 16, assuming he wasn't going to be able to recover from it fast enough.
So I'm really interested to see on this episode. I listened to the same thing you did, Alexa, where Jeff said on his podcast, like, hey, there's a character that, everyone's going to fall in love with this week. So who's your theory? Who do you think it is?
My guess was Carolyn, but there's plenty of others it could be.
I think it's Franny,
but
I'm curious. I don't know. Who knows? The reason I think it's Carolyn, because the way he said it, it made me think it's like not an obvious person, like because Carolyn already, like from the gate, like from the jump, she's this massive character, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it'd be like, the way he said it just seemed like, there's somebody who's gonna, almost surprise you as like this really lovable character. So I can't wait to see who it is.
I totally agree with that too, Brendan, because they knew what they had with Carolyn. Just by telling us right away, like, we're going to break the fourth wall and have her open the season with one of the most chaotic confessionals ever. Like, where she can't even put the words together to just say, hey, like, I'm Carolyn and this is what I do. And the producers are kind of making fun of her for it, but she's laughing along. They are telling us right away, like, here's one of the stars of your season. And we know that you're going to think she's one of the stars of this. Like, we know you're going to love her. But I think it might be Matt because, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Lovesick puppy.
He's
come on.
Like, he's such a puppy.
I don't know. I just keep pulling for Matt because I don't know. He looks like Will Toledo, and I keep saying it, but he's just tall. All right. Well, that was almost 2 hours, which is Brendan. It's great that you like come in and you're like practiced and experienced at this point, because I don't know if many other people would have been able to come on and do 2 full hours of having to talk shit with us.
Well, I don't know how you're going to talk about 16 people with that, like in under an hour and 43, which is where we are right now. So
we've done
happy to do it.
And if you're a survivor who's listening, you want to come on now, do final 6 or final 7, because it's gonna be like a 25-minute podcast.
Yeah, in the future, call me when we're halfway through the season. That might work out better. And I'll like prepare and I'll have my list in advance, and I won't screw it all up like I did in the middle of this thing. It's fine.
You are actually more prepared than like 90% of the people that we've had.
And I wrote it down on this Post-it note, and these are not in order. But if Bruce, if that's the real Bruce in the I love that, Brendan. We have the same Post-it notes. Bruce, if that's the real you in the chat, hello. Hope you're doing well. Glad that you got another invite. If it's not the real you, somebody made a good fake account.
I bet it's a Bruce imposter. If it's the real you, Bruce, you got to prove it somehow.
I don't know. It's Bruce.
I don't know.
Bruce, by the way,
go ahead.
He seems like a super cool guy. What we did, like on our podcast, we did this like first impressions kind of thing, just based on their pictures and based on their little bios. And I said, I think at one point I said,
well,
that Bruce's, he says it's him. He just said it's me. I don't know. But I was like, Bruce's like bio is the most, and if this is you, Bruce, I apologize, but at least I'm talking right to you. I was like, this is the most boring bio in the history of all bios. Like he seems like a great guy, like super nice guy. He's probably a great neighbor, a great friend, great husband, but like, there's nothing to make fun of. There's nothing interesting. It's just kind of like this all-American good dude, there's nothing there. And then we saw a little bit of him in the episode, and he you can tell, I think if he had been on the show for a while, like there's a big personality there. It's gregarious and fun. And so it's too bad we didn't get to see him. Although, as we've learned, we're going to get to see more of Bruce in the future at some undetermined point in time. So Bruce, if that's really you, I look forward to seeing much more of you on my TV screen.
Well, that's why Phil liked him so much in the preseason. Phil was like, he's full dad. Like that's Phil's type. Phil loves a dad. It's like that's that.
Brendan was my winner pick. Terry Dietz is like, he's like on my Mount Rushmore. He's the George Washington right there over on the side. Like that's just my character. Everybody thinks I go for the Michelles because I always pick the female winner. That's because the alpha males I pick have just broken my heart too many times. So now I have to go and pick the Michelles because they sometimes get it done.
Well, I've told this story before, but in casting, I was in the process really early, like back in 2003, and this is back when they did these semifinal interviews. So I went to Atlanta for a semifinal interview, and I had the choice. I go to Atlanta or New York. I was like, where's there going to be stiffer competition? Somehow I thought I'm in the DC area. I thought that competition would be not as stiff in Atlanta. Of course, it didn't matter. But I went down there, and I was like 26 at the time, and I just got the sense that they were getting a good look at me. They're like, wait, what is it? Like at that time, they wanted their 26-year-olds to be like eligible bachelors, right? And I was married and I just had a kid and it just wasn't it, right? And so I remember I got home and I told my wife, I was like, if they're still making the show when I'm 40, I got a shot. Well, fast forward all these years and I was in the process a couple other times. Well, finally, I turned 40 years old. Caitlin in casting called me. She's like, I'm going to get you to finals finally this time. So I get to finals and I'm sitting in this meeting. Like you get a couple days through casting finals, or at least the way it used to be. I'm in this hotel suite with Jeff. I'm sitting down. It looks exactly like it was in my dreams, and I told the story to Jeff and the other producers that were in the room. I'm like, Jeff, I'm so excited to be here because I was in this process like, 17 years ago or whatever, 15 years ago. And at the time I told my wife, if they're still making the show when I'm 40, I'm in. And I turned 40 years old and they called me. But I remember when they called me, what made me think of this was I was supposed to be like a Bruce, right? You talked about the dads. Caitlin told me, she's like you're the all-American dad. Like that's your thing. Like that's your archetype. Right. So that's what I was supposed to be. It was short-lived. It really didn't work out. And as it turns out, it probably was the worst thing for me because on my cast, I was on still to date, the youngest cast in the history of Survivor. And in 44 seasons, there's never been one younger. And so on my cast, I was the dad, like way,
you were.
I was the oldest man on my tribe by 16 years, which was not the best thing for me.
That's crazy.
And I was supposed to be on the prior season on 35, and on 35, I would have blended right in. Like there were plenty of people my age, but so it goes.
I go through this every single year. I'm like, oh, the geriatric player who's 41. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, Brendan, you're probably in better shape than, 80%, 90% of this cast. And you'd probably say 100% of the cast. But either way, of this cast that's on right now, and you would be, I think, the oldest person on that cast. I don't think we have a 50 plus on this cast. I think the highest was 45. I don't know how old Bruce was.
Yeah. Gabler broke it.
Anyway, if it is you, Bruce, I hope it's the real Bruce, because now I can apologize directly to you for saying that your cast was boring. Anyway, yeah. So excited to see more Bruce in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And excited to see more Brendan in the future. I'm glad that the surviving Snyder thing kind of kept going, because at first I was like, what is this? Like, what are you guys doing? And then I thought it was just going to be one of those, like, we just wanted to do it. And Dalton was just kind of looking maybe for something. And I mean, what are you on now? Are you on year 2? Like officially year 2? Have you done 4 full seasons?
I lose track of the years. I know. Yeah, we're definitely in year 2. I think we've done over 100 episodes. So we do. Yeah. So I don't know. It seems like a lot to me. It all started out like, so Rick Devens one day. So I knew Dalton was a Washington football fan. They used to be the Redskins. Now they're the Commanders, for those of you who are not football people. So Dalton and I would text each other during games because it was miserable, and misery loves company. And so so then all of a sudden he introduced this new person into the group chat, like the group text, and it was a phone number I didn't recognize. And then I quickly realized it was Rick Devens. And so like Dalton, Rick, and I we had this group text called Misery Loves Company, and we would just be miserable together watching games and feeling sad about what was happening on the field and off the field with our team. And so one day Dalton was like, "Hey, what do you guys think about turning this group chat into or group text into a podcast? Because what does the world need but more podcasts, right?"
Yeah.
So, so we decided to do it, and we thought we had sort of a catchy name, Surviving Snyder. This guy Dan Snyder is one of the most horrible people on earth, and he's the owner of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, you get the gist. So we talk about football and we talk about Survivor, sort of an equal measure when both seasons are in swing. But there are times a year where it's mostly football and times a year where it's mostly Survivor, and we are in a mostly Survivor period right now. And it's been fun talking to those guys because Dalton's like an encyclopedia of Survivor knowledge, and Rick's Rick. So we have a lot of fun with it.
I love that. Rick is Rick. Rick is
That's
Rick.
your tagline.
Yeah. The first time I met Rick was the exact same Rick was the next time I talked to him, and the next time I talked to him, and the next. Like Rick, just you don't know that it's the first time you've met Rick Devens because Rick Devens is just Rick Devens from the first time.
Yeah, you know those people that are like on at all times,
like
forever in their lives. Like there's no off switch, right? So he's always like his brain's spinning. He's just saying funny things constantly. It just So anyway, it's fun. Like those guys keep it moving. I'm the amateur of the group, and we have a good time together.
Well, you were the professional tonight because I mumbled all over whatever, and Alexa was struggling with her iPad. So you got to be the professional tonight, and that's all that really matters, right? But Alexa, before I let you outro, I just want to throw this in. First of all, thank you, Brendan. But second of all, we have 757 videos on our YouTube, which just made me go look that up because of what you said, Brendan. So it kind of disturbs me that we have that many, and I kind of wish we were closer to 100 because now I'm thinking, I mean, I've spent 757 hours at least doing this podcast. Holy crap. Way more. So there you go, Brendan. You can start having like really big midlife crisis vibes once you hit 757 videos. So, but yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. And it's fun that Dalton's kind of doing that kind of thing because Dalton, he does his EW thing, but that's the EW thing. So it's fun to see him kind of do something a little bit different and spice it up with two of our favorite people to talk to. Because we've had Rick on, I think 2 or 3 times as well. So you're both very, very enjoyable company. And we'll have you again in the future. And we promise it'll be for a shorter episode.
Yeah. Get me in like when there's like 8 left.
Yes.
I will spin pure gold. If I only have to be on for like 20 minutes, it'll be the most beautiful 20 minutes you've ever experienced.
I love that. Well, Alexa, take us home then, as that's Brendan's note to end on.
All right, so to end our 758th video that's going to be on our channel, which is a disgusting number to say out loud, Phil and I are.
Oh, see, that's the way this is.
That's how you end 758 right there. Alexa doesn't even realize that she's frozen. This is fantastic.
She's still talking, yeah.
She's still talking. She's probably thinking she's killing it, and we're just playing along. And she's gone now. All right.
What a disaster.
There she is. She's back, sort of. Alexa, do you think you can do it, or you want me to do it?
I don't know where I lost you, but anyways.
You lost us right away.
All right. I'm not going to make the same joke. I made a really funny joke about the 758th episode. We'll be live right after the episode. 9 p.m. Eastern, only 1 hour this week. For those of you who aren't patrons, now is a fantastic time to be a patron. There's a ton of extra content. John and McKenna, who you've definitely heard from before, they have been helping us out, and there's going to be a lot more content coming out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Phil is going to do his after show either after the episode on Wednesday or sometime Thursday. It always varies. And yeah, I am going to be gone after Wednesday for 2 episodes. I'm going to miss predictions, and I'm going to miss a recap. I know you'll all be okay without me. Phil will try to be the nice cop. That's usually my job, but we'll see how he does.
We'll see how I do. And yeah, if you haven't checked out John and McKenna's new show, it's Survivor Rewind, where they talk about all the things that this new episode reminds them of from the past. And then for the patrons, they're doing it where they literally compare this episode or something that happened in this episode to like very specific moments from Survivor's past. So of course, this one, they were able to talk all about Survivor Co-Wrong, episode 4. So that's what they're talking about. And the comparisons are endless, obviously, with that one and all the medevacs and Caleb and all that fun stuff. So tune into that. Otherwise, Brendan, always a pleasure. Glad we finally are able to get you back on. And keep doing what you're doing. You're going to be better than Rick in no time. Don't you worry about that.
All right, guys. Anytime. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing the episode to find out which of us, although we kind of agreed, right? But which of us is the most right
much of it.
Exactly.
We're gonna get a random
There's always
boot,
a
and it'll be like we'll get like 4, 5, and 6 points and look foolish. And why did we even bother doing this? But
Yeah.
hey, we'll see. But thanks,
All
Brendan.
right.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody.
See ya.
Everyone.